Well, good evening. Thank you for coming out. We hear, and I've heard, that the advertising is lacking, so we're going to work on that, and thank you for your input on that. Tonight, I'm one of the three speakers. I'm speaking to you a little bit about democracy, how Canada's doing as a democracy would be more accurate. And then my husband, John, will speak, and we'll finish off with the one you've been waiting for, our Christopher Scott. I think that's all I have to say. Let's start then with the talk. There are some characteristics of a democracy that I think we all know. And the first one is, a democracy is a government by the people. We, the people, right, form the democracy, not by a ruler, not by a king. And the people are supposed to hold the power. And that power is given to us by God. How many of you are feeling right now that Canada is meeting that criteria? Yeah. It was interesting. In 1776, that's a long time ago, a gentleman by the name of Alexander Francis Tytler, honestly, that's his name, Tytler identified democracies as having stages. By the time you leave, I sound like a teacher. I used to be a teacher. Yes, I confess. Okay? I was probably a very unique beast because I was one of probably almost 2 or 3% of the teachers that were conservative leading. And I think that's probably lower nowadays. Anyways, he said there are some stages. Listen to these stages, and as it goes, try and figure out where's Canada right now. Where's our democracy? What stage are we in? Nations begin in bondage, and they're pretty hopeless, and they start to pray, and through that prayer they gain faith. And because they have faith, they begin to get courage, and because of that courage, they gain their freedom. Because understand, most nations have to be formed with a battle, right? But then, with freedom, something really spectacular happens. People begin to build and create abundance, and they become very prosperous. This is not just in these days. Now, this is 76 that he's writing here, 1776, and he saw it way back then. But it is true. Can you hear me at the back? Okay, it is true that all nations with freedom, create abundance. Interestingly enough, if you're not a nation that is free, like in, for instance, the USSR, those people had so little they lined up. They finally decided they wanted their independence when the food lineups, the bread lineups in particular, were like 3 hours long. They have come miles. Well, they've come halfway around the world since then, once they gained their freedom. So, with freedom, they create abundance. They gain prosperity, but then something interesting happens. And if you've read C.S. Lewis, you'll understand this one. Citizens become selfish, apathetic, and complacent. Because the people discover, this will hit home, that they can vote themselves dollars by voting for the party that promises them the most dollars and benefits. Which party promises in Canada the most stuff? Right?
There's 2 parties.
Well, there's 2 parties. We have more parties than normal. Canada's first government benefit was the baby bonus, and it was in 1945. That was 81 years ago. And in that 81 years now, it is absolutely, I know because I tried, it is extremely difficult to find out all the services that our federal government gives to our people. It's literally almost, maybe AI can do it, but I couldn't do it. And I'm a former teacher. We research like crazy, right? There are so many systems that they have.
But not only do they give them to our people, but they give them to people that are illegal. illegally in our country.
Yeah, we got some foreigners getting it, don't we? Obviously, it costs billions yearly. But interestingly enough, it's not just we, the citizens, that get smart. Our government representatives get smart too. And they start living off the largesse of our treasury, our national treasury, which is our tax dollars. Because the governments don't have any money on their own. They only have our money that we've given it to them. And when that happens, the governments get greedy and they get corrupt. And on top of it, they're really bad budgeters. So everything costs twice as much as it should, right? And this dependency on governments always leads back to citizen bondage. It's a cycle. It leads back to bondage because when a government takes care of us and gives us our money, we become dependent on them. They now rule over us, and that is just not a good situation for anyone. It pounds you into the ground. It gives you no hope. It takes away your motivation. You can only go as far as they say you can. It's negative, and it starts all over again. So the cycle is bondage, faith, courage, freedom, and dependency on government. And then bondage, faith, it takes years. Just think for a minute. You don't have to answer out. Where is Canada in this? It's interesting because you could find that we were in any part there, isn't it? I would suggest, no, I'm not even going to suggest right now. I'm going to give you some pointers that might help you make that decision, and then we'll get back to that. I'm going to look at the economic situation of Canada as it stands right now. Okay? Mostly I'm talking about the last 10, 11 years, so the last decade-ish. Homelessness has doubled over the past few years, say probably 4. Unemployment is way too high. We're back to 1980 standards. In fact, Canada's unemployment rate is significantly higher than the G7 average. Everybody know what the G7 average is? That's a group of the 7 top economic countries in the world. We've just gone from first to last in the G7, and that's happened in the last decade. Household debt is rising. What's the word? I'm the teacher, he's the grammar king.
We all understand.
Okay. Going that way.
Going up.
Insolvency and bankruptcy. Insolvency is just kind of the business is gone, but we're not really in a position where we're going to go all the way to bankruptcy. So the business folds rather than go bankrupt. Pension worries. How many of you have pension worries? A lot of people speaking up about that. Those that are living on the government pension, from the young, when we were working with APP, we had to make a lot of phone calls, and the young guys were working their butts off, sometimes 12 to 14, most times 12 to 14 hours a day, bringing home a pile of money, paying $7,000 in taxes every 2 weeks. $7,000 of your hard work is going to the federal government. That's pretty sad. The seniors, of course, are worried that, first of all, if we separate, what happens to our pension? But if they're smart seniors, they're also saying, wait a minute, Carney just gave away $3 billion, 2.9, it was actually him and Trudeau. In the last 2 years, 2.9, let's say 3 billion was taken out of our Canada, our CPP, Canada Pension Plan. Some of it was put into the general revenue, you could kiss that goodbye, and some of it was actually taken out of Canada. You'll never see it again. Now, what are they saying? They know they can't touch the CPP, but the OAS is not our money. You could say it was indirectly because it's all our money. We didn't pay directly into that. Our business owners, or the government in my case, didn't pay directly into it, so the government is supporting that OAS, right? And what are they just now talking about? We've got to decrease the OAS. We don't have enough money for the OAS. Now, if it was a smart government, they might have taken and moving that $3 billion into that sub-fund, and we might be displeased, but we wouldn't be totally unhappy because we'd be getting it back in the long run. So the Canada pension plan is in really bad shape. Some say it's going to be gone within 10 years, and some say 15. So our young kids are saying, I'm going to be paying all this money into it. When I get there, there's no CPP. And us oldies are saying, geez, am I going to outlive my pension plan? We're in trouble. Canada's GDP, I've already said, is the lowest in the G7. We have burdensome taxes. Actually, the Bible has a better way. Do you know what? I started this without a prayer, Chris. Yes. I just realized that. Could we bow our heads in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we are thankful to be gathered here today. We ask that Thou would bless this meeting with Thy presence, that we might know truth from wrong, and that we might get some hope and generate some ideas on how we can do better. We ask that Thou would bless this meeting. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. And my apologies, Heavenly Father. Businesses. I don't know if you've noticed in this town, because honestly it's my first time here, but in central Alberta, where I'm from, a lot of businesses are closing, and far fewer are coming in and starting a new business. That is the same right across Canada. The number of business starts are far fewer than the ones that are closing. Anytime you're in that situation, anytime, your economy is in trouble. And that's one of the sure signs. The top, this is even almost more worrisome. The top earners in Canada are leaving in numbers that we've never seen. And we mean by top earners, both the business top earners and the wage top earners. They're usually going down south to the United States, but they're going out in droves. 30%, depends on the province, but say 30 to 40% of your doctors, your lawyers, top businesses, top businessmen, professional people are going. That's bad enough because we spend a lot of money to get people educated, a lot. And so it's a loss. Liberals' suggestion was, let's just say that they can't go unless they pay $500,000, $500,000. That's as communist as you can get. I'm sorry, but nobody but communist nations say to people, you can't leave. Okay, now that didn't pass. That didn't pass at their national convention, but they just introduce it and they keep pushing at it until it will pass. So it didn't pass this year, but look down the road, maybe 6-7 years, it'll be there. Bad news is that our blue-collar workers are leaving at almost the same rates. They say for them it's about 30 to 50, so it varies a lot too. But that's our tradespeople, our construction people, really the people that we can't live without. We can live without lawyers, probably. Doctors is a little iffy. But you need your electricians, you need your farmers, you need all of your trades, carpenters, you name it. And they're going south as well. So, we're in trouble that way. Interestingly enough, although many immigrants are coming in, and our population has grown 2 million over the last 5 or 6 years, in Canada I'm talking now, right? 33% of immigrants don't stay longer than 20 to 25 years. By the time they've been here 25 years, they're gone. And they too are going south. And I think that they're less scared of making a change because they've already made a big one. So they know they can do it. I think you all know that inflation is terrible. It's going up all the time. I do not believe the, what is it they usually say? It's about 3% figure, inflation. And I'm sorry, but my food costs have definitely gone up more than 3%. How about yours? Yeah. Yeah, it feels like 50. I mean, you go and buy a steak these days, if you can afford it. Food bank numbers have also doubled. So now I'm going to ask again, how's Canada doing in the stages of democracy? How are we looking? Not very good. How many would say that we're probably in, and please, you can just see, when I say to my kids, nobody wants to put their hand up and be embarrassed. I might get a wrong answer. We don't really care about that here, but that's what we felt back then. Just do this if you want to. How many think we're in the bondage stage? And like I said before, there's some validation for this. It's an economical bondage, isn't it? It's not a prison around us. How many think we're in the, oh gosh, I've forgotten. Go bondage, faith. How many think we're in the faith stage?
Some people are.
It's starting to bloom, isn't it? People are starting to say, my gosh, the only hope I've got is to pray to Heavenly Father. How many think that we're in the courage stage? Not quite there yet. How about the freedom stage? Not quite there yet. How many think that we've also got into a situation where we've prospered and now we're living off the government? The government's made it. Yeah, it's one way of putting it. The government's made it, so we're living off of it. But you know what, hon? We gave them permission. And we supported their efforts. And I think that we've got to be wise of that. I'm old enough to remember our church, in particular, our leaders said, don't even take baby bonus. Now this I've heard from my mom and dad, because I wasn't even born then, right? They talked against it, even then. And when you asked why, it was because you become under their control. But we all took baby bonus. Oops. We all took baby bonus. I'm not used to having one of these in my face, obviously. So our financial situation, it's pretty clear that it's crumbling. In fact, we've just been notified that Canada is in recession. And they say within 2 years, if things don't change, we'll be in a depression. I say it's going to be sooner. Some others do too. The interesting thing is, and this might firm up which stage we're in, when they go from all that wonderful blessing of great prosperity and we get dependent, guess what the next thing is we get? A dictator. Traditionally, all free countries go through, and when the government takes over, they become dictatorial. Now, sadly, we're already hearing that many people are feeling already that Carney is making too many independent decisions on his own without going to his parliament. I intend to agree with them. And the last one just really got me. And that was, he has decided that the people of Canada will support the WEF and all of its policies, World Economic Forum. That one is pretty much it. Tonight I focused on providing the economic state of Canada because it's the change variable that results in the death of democracies. It's the thing that makes the final change back to bondage. My father was in the Navy and my mom in the Women's Army. It's called the Women's Army Corps, the WACS. My father-in-law was in the Army. Those three people gave up probably close to 15 years of their lives. They say, how could you? How could you make the decision to go for independence? It's very simple. It took me a while to get there, a long while. But when I figured out that mom and dad or the country of Canada, which they all love, if I have to, and I'm getting pretty old, go and die and face my mom and dad, am I going to say to them, What do you mean I should have fought for freedom? It's not going to die on my watch. My children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren deserve far better than that. And it's true, if you read the research, every single generation has to fight and keep the freedom. I'm so glad you're all here tonight doing that. Thank you. Oh, I got to introduce my husband.
Do you know me well enough?
I don't know. What can I say? Actually, this is my husband, John. He's a former, I forgot to tell. He's also in the military. He was in the Air Force, and then as an older gentleman, not yet elderly, obviously, he joined the reserves, the Army Reserves. So yeah, he's fought for freedom too. And the one thing I will say is all those people would have been fighting no matter what flag they were under for freedom. Didn't matter the country they lived in. He's a businessman. We farmed. Did I miss anything? Oh, he was also the leader, the first leader of the Alberta First Party way back in the 90s. And we actually at that time wrote the policy, and we were in the same position as Premier Smith is now. So we've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt, and I'm here to tell you it didn't work. Okay, you cannot become a sovereign nation in Canada unless you're Quebec. And they can make all their little demands that they want because they've got the numbers. So anyways, here's my husband. Enjoy.
Thank you for that glowing introduction. I'm not sure that any of it's even half true. Although I did join the RCAF when I was 17 years old, and I did serve as an officer in the Canadian Army Reserve, actually in the Communication Reserve for a number of years as well. But that's neither here nor there. When my wife is absolutely correct. My father-in-law, and my mother-in-law didn't fight for Canada. Let's face it, we were thousands of miles away from the people who were belligerent in the Second World War. We had oceans on either side of us. The likelihood that Germany and or Japan would successfully invade North America was slim and none, and Slim was on his way to Utah. So they didn't fight for Canada. They fought for the freedom of the people who were enslaved, essentially, by the German Nazi Party. So they fought for a principle, and that's what we talk about a lot. Now let's get away from what I think should happen, and let's just look at some interesting facts. Yesterday saw that Mr. Carney has decided that they're going to bail out some condo developers in British Columbia. Did you hear about that? Yeah. $3.2 billion or something to bail out 2,200 condos which the developers can't sell, which works out to about $1.5 million per condo. And the market value of each of those condos is about $775,000. So they are bailing out the people who built those condos for $500,000 per condo more than their market value, because they're going to then walk around and say, look what we're doing, we're going to turn it into affordable housing. So they're going to enrich the developers with your tax money. They decided they were going to have a $32 billion surplus this year at our federal government level. Last check it was 42, then it was 62. Now they're forecasting over $70 billion by the not a surplus, deficit. Pardon me. Wow, they're forecasting up to $70 billion deficit in the federal finances this year. This year, this fiscal year, that's correct. Now, my wife talked a little bit about Canada and depression or recession. All of Canada is in recession, except, No,
it's not Alberta. We are not in a recession.
We're not in a recession, but
we're in a stagnant.
We're stagnant. We are not in the recession in Alberta. The rest of the country is. I want to point out something for you. Equalization in the Maritime Provinces. The Maritime Provinces, which are basically Newfoundland, pardon me, not Newfoundland, but Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island receive anywhere from 18 to 27% of their annual budgets in equalization. Without equalization, they would be in terrible trouble. The other thing is that we're having an expansion to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We're going to make more money in Alberta. Guess what? Anybody here ever heard of a wealth windfall tax? You ever heard of that? You know what a windfall tax is? Look at those Alberta guys. They got all sorts of money coming in they don't need. Let's take it. So you're faced with the possibility right now that the only economy that isn't really struggling, although we are, but not to the same degree as the rest of the country, the only economy in the country that's not really struggling is ours. So what does that mean? Let's go get some more money from Alberta. Canada has a AA credit rating. They have a AA credit rating because of the inputs they have. The inputs are measured in dollars to the federal government. Guess where those dollars come from? Alberta and Saskatchewan, and to a lesser degree, British Columbia. So if Alberta leaves, what happens to Canada's credit rating? There's no more inputs. Canada is really, really, really not doing very well. And without Alberta, they will not only not do well, they could very well not do at all. I used an example here in a talk previous. Let's just say that you're a married couple and you have a brother or a brother-in-law that just got divorced, lost his job, lost his house, lost his car, doesn't have any money, and he comes to you and says, brother, I've lost everything. Can I just come and stay in your basement suite for a little while until I get back on my feet? You say, sure. It's 1995, 2000. He came to see you in 1987, and he's still there. What are you going to do with him? Not only that, you go to make breakfast in the morning in the fridge for the bacon and eggs, and there's none left because he had a midnight snack. What do you do with your brother-in-law? You give him the boot. So my considered opinion is this. The only way to save Canada is for us to leave. That's the only way to save Canada. If we leave, we force Quebec to actually mine the petroleum products they have under the surface, the hundreds of millions of cubic feet of natural gas that they have that they won't explore for, the shale oil they have that they won't drill for or frack for. If we leave, they're going to have to do that, aren't they? So, I guess. Now I'm going to pivot from that. I don't want to talk about the economy because it makes me really, really sad. It really does. Our economy is unspeakably bad. We are not just the G7, but of all the developed economies in the world, we're right at the tag end. We are worse than every other developed economy in the world. And we used to be the best. At the end of the Second World War, our Prime Minister stood up and said, the 20th century belongs to Canada, and it should have. But we screwed it up. And we screwed it up because we elected the wrong people. Now, I want to make a point. Does anybody know we elect wonderful people to our legislature, both federal and provincial, don't we? Aren't they great people that we elect? No, I'm serious. They're good people. They're your neighbors. You know them. They're good people. What is their first objective once they become elected? What is their very first concern? Is it you? To get elected again. And how do they do that? They make promises. And what do the promises involve? Money. Where does the money come from? You. And it comes from the printing press. What happens when the government prints money? Inflation. Let's say that there's $100 in circulation. That's the total amount of money in the entire country. And they produce another 100 $1 bills. What is that money worth? 50 cents. So the more money they print and put out, the less money you have in your pocket. Inflation outstrips your earnings. It always has and it always will. And the other thing about inflation that nobody gives any serious consideration to is that when you get raises in your money to try and recoup your position with respect to the value of your earnings, they give you a raise. What does that mean to the federal government? More money because you go up in the tax bracket. The only operation that profits from more money being printed and put into circulation is the government. Sure as heck ain't you. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I don't want to spend too much time here because the really important guy is standing back there behind the camera, and I want you to hear what he has to say because he knows what he's talking about and he says it very clearly. But I want to talk about the hallmarks of a free society. The first hallmark of a free society is the rule of law, not of man. My wife talked about rights. Rights are natural rights. They don't come from governments. The most complete and comprehensive Bill of Rights ever to exist in the world was on the wall of the Parliament of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So, what the government says about rights is meaningless. You have natural rights that are yours by just the dint of the fact that you're a human being, and those rights need to be recognized. So the law should apply equally to all citizens, all rulers, and institutions alike. Do we have that in Canada? Can we think of anything to demonstrate that? Like Trudeau and all of his ethics violations? How about Carney and his relationship to Brookfield? The second thing that is the hallmark of a free society is free and fair and regular elections. Do we have free and fair elections? The last federal election was over at 15 minutes after 8, which was the poll closing time in Alberta, and there were still people standing in line to vote, and the election was called. The Liberals won. Do we have fair elections? No. Protection of individual rights. Anybody see the photographs of the film of the RCMP running over the lovely lady with a walker? They were involved in a protest. Protests in Canada are supposedly legal. Then we go on to talk about the fact that they seized bank accounts, put people in jail, and you've got Chris Barber and Tamara Leach, who are still under house arrest years later for mischief. Well, we have people who have physically harmed other people, even murdered them, who are out walking on the streets. Is that a fair application of the law? So that's not a protection of individual rights at all. How about the separation of powers? No single person should have absolute control in a free and fair society. Carney shut down Parliament for 8 months and ruled from the Privy Council. How does that fit with living in a free society? Is that free? Powers are supposed to be divided. No single person can dominate. We have the executive, which is responsible to enforce and implement the laws. We have the legislature, which is supposed to create law. And we have the judiciary, which is supposed to interpret law. All of those go by the board when things like SLC-Lavalin happens, and it just turns my stomach to even talk about that kind of stuff. Here's another one for you in a free society: free press and open information. There's a lot of debate going on about independence for Alberta, and of course it's wonderful because our wonderful media make sure to do a lot of investigation and precisely and fairly puts out both sides of the argument, don't they? Well, I'm sure they would. I mean, just ask any of them, they'd tell you they will. Now, we don't have that. Winston Churchill said that the reason that the United Kingdom had so many colonies is because the United Kingdom was civilized and the colonies weren't. Now, that sounds like a terrible thing to say until he clarified what he meant. What he meant was, and he clarified this by saying exactly this, in a society where the leaders, the strong, take direction from the weak, that is a civilized society. So his position was that until these colonies learned that those who were in charge would take their direction from those who they theoretically were in charge of, they were not civilized. And I tend to agree with him. Civilian control of the military is a big thing. Protection of minority rights. We need to have the smallest minority in the entire country. Do anybody know what it is?
Yeah, me.
Yeah, me. One person, one individual. That's the smallest minority in the country. It's not a group of people from Zimbabwe or even our First Nations. That's not the smallest minority. The smallest minority is every individual person. And those rights, those individual rights need to be protected. And if you protect the rights of the individual, you also protect the rights of the groups to which they belong. Does that make sense? You don't have to protect the rights of the group if you protect the rights of the individual. Economic freedom and property rights. Do we have that in Canada? Not a chance. We need a culture that values freedom. And in order to have a culture that values freedom, we need a courageous population. We don't need somebody to tell us what to do. We just need to look at what is required and do it at our level. You don't need Mahatma Gandhi or Churchill. You don't need those guys. It's you. We need you. You need you. You are accountable and responsible for ensuring that we live in a society that's free and fair. And the way you do that is that when you leave here, you investigate all of the things that are happening in this country. You find out about it. You make yourself as aware as possible as you can. And then you spread that information to your friends, your family, and anybody else who's willing to talk with you in a calm and reasoned manner. You don't need to talk to people who cuss and swear at you and throw things. But you do need to talk to people who don't agree with you. And you need to talk to them in a manner which is kind to them and factual in what you say. Okay? Now, what is a country? I'm just about done, Chris, honest.
Don't rush on my account.
A country requires unity. Do we have unity in Canada? Anybody got any idea when our disunity began? Let's have a multicultural country. Let's bring everybody in here and let's not say, recognize what we are and become part of it. No, it's okay. You can just carry on doing what you do. Just do it here instead of there. So we get all of there brought here. It hasn't worked. National security. We need a strong military. We don't have a strong military, and I speak that from someone who is part of it. Okay? Our military is very, very, very good. We just don't have the equipment. We don't have the people. And we don't have the money for training. When I joined the Air Force in 1965, there was 116,000 people in the Air Force. There's now something like 70,000 in all three. That was from 1965 till now. So that tells you what we've allowed to happen to our military. We need good governance. Does anybody think we have good governance? We need to protect our rights and freedoms, and we've already talked about that. We don't. We need economic prosperity and growth, and we need personal and community well-being in order to have a country. Joanne talked about it. We need prosperity and we need growth. And the way we get that is by protecting our freedom. There isn't any example of any country in the world that hasn't succeeded when they become free. Let's take Venezuela. A year and a half, 2 years ago, they were on the ropes. They needed wheelbarrows of cash to buy a loaf of bread. They are really doing well now. Why? Because that individual that half the people hate and half the people love went down there and got rid of their president, who was a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist communist, and freed the country up so that the people could actually do what they needed to do, which was to develop their country. They're doing very well. Canada and Venezuela are at the opposite ends of the continents of North and South America. We used to be twins. We were both doing very, very well. They screwed it up. They're fixing it. We screwed it up. We're not fixing it. So let's get...
We're trying.
Yeah, well...
Alberta.
Yeah. All I can say is this. What we have in Alberta is we have a situation whereby we can, if we do what we need to do, we can fix Alberta. We can spring loose all of the potential that we have, and we can do that. We had our very own premier talk the other day about the cost of $400 billion to become independent. Do any of you believe that? Well, some people will. The fact of the matter is, we already pay for that crap. By $23 to $45 billion a year extra that we send to the federal government we don't get back, we already pay for it. So the idea that we're going to have to pay all that money after we become independent is horse hockey. It really is. And they have now commissioned a study to show what the actual cost of becoming independent would be. And I got to tell you, I'm looking a little sideways at that because I really don't trust our government. In any event, what I will say is this: I really appreciate that you're here. We will have a question and answer session after Chris speaks, and any of your concerns we will address. We will answer any question. If you're in favor of staying in Canada, tell us and tell us why. If you're in favor of becoming independent, tell us and ask us questions about the process. We'll answer all of them. I love the fact that you're here. I appreciate you, and I will say one more thing. My dad walked down the middle of the street in towns in Holland with a 20-foot radio antenna attached to a 100-pound radio on his back, and he didn't crawl through the sides in the rubble like his companions did in the infantry, because you can't hide with a 20-foot antenna. The average life expectancy of a signaller, that's an infantry signalman, of a signaller in combat in the Second World War was something under 3 minutes. He walked down the middle of the street. I'm a believer I believe in God. And I think my father was preserved for a reason, because there's no way in the world that he should have survived. Talk about courage. They had courage. And I would ask you to consider that courage isn't lack of fear. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. So if you're afraid you might have your bank account seized, if you're afraid they might identify, if you're afraid your neighbors might give you a rough time because of your beliefs and your actions, do it anyway. Be courageous. Let's do what we need to do to make Alberta free and independent. Thank you very much.
I forgot one thing. Oh, this doesn't work. I forgot one thing. I have a handout to support the comments on our financial situation. It's going to be back with a pile of handouts that Chris and Jessica have brought with them too. And if you need information so you can talk to your neighbors, maybe have small coffee clutches and just invite them to a patio, I don't know, ice cream cone day, then please feel free to take these and use them widely. It supports, what we need right now is facts. What we need right now is facts. And these are facts. Well researched, and trust me, they can change in a while. Keep your ears open for any possible changes. I'd like to introduce to you my dear friend Chris. Chris has fought this battle longer than all of us. It's a personal situation for him, but he is now fighting, and always did fight, on behalf of all Albertans. When he talks from the voice of experience. Without further ado, Chris, please come and talk.
I think you can keep that one. I think this one will work. Yeah, I think. We'll find out. Maybe if Jessica can watch the screen, if people start yelling at me that they can't hear me, I'll have to use a different mic. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. It's fantastic to be back up in Slave Lake. Most of my experience in this area is closer to Wabasca. I worked for CNRL for quite some time, and so I was back and forth to Slave Lake, Wabasca, out to Peace River, up to Grimshaw, all over the place, and I absolutely love it up here. One of the things that I love the most about this part of Alberta is how prosperous it can be when the government stays out of the way. I'm sure most of the people in this room have experienced that or seen it in one way or another, but it's a great example of what we can do when we're left to do what we want to do, right? We spent years developing things up here. Oil companies, they built roads, they built infrastructure, they built community centers, and they did that because we were allowed to work and develop our resources and do the things that we needed to do to be prosperous. So it's a great case study for what Alberta can be when we're left to be it. So here we are in 2026, and we have a referendum coming up in October that 10 years ago we would have never dreamed we were going to have. There's some very important and consequential questions on there, the least of which is not the question on Alberta sovereignty. The last question, or the first question, I can't remember how it's going to work, but one of the questions in this upcoming referendum is asking if Albertans want to pursue a change. We want to do something different. So in October, when we go into this referendum, when we make our choices, it's not going to change the world overnight. We're not going to become a new nation or anything like that. We're not going to be not part of Canada. What Alberta is saying, if they choose what I think is option B, which is, let me try and remember what it is. Do you agree that the government of Alberta should take the necessary steps according to the Constitution of Canada to begin the legal process of Alberta becoming a sovereign nation, or something like that? It's a pretty long, convoluted question, but the guts of it is, do you want to do something different, Alberta? Do you want to pursue a path that we've never pursued before, that we don't actually know everything that we're going to do, but do you want something different? Or, alternatively, do you want the status quo? So part A, I believe, is, do you want the status quo, nothing changes? Part B is, do you want to change something? My opinion is I want to change something. I believe Alberta needs some very significant changes. And I believe that most of the changes Alberta needs are outside of what our current structure allows. I believe Alberta should be allowed to pursue our own destiny. We should be allowed to develop our resources free of federal or really any government interference. Regulation, yes. Interference, no. I believe that individual rights and liberties should be paramount, and that is not available within the current system. If you don't believe me, I'll share my story about sitting in jail for the crime of protesting on my own property, peacefully. That happened. The changes we need, it's a systemic change. We live under a set of rules that were never necessarily meant to, for Alberta or Western Canada for that matter, to be autonomous or prosperous. We were never meant to be the economic engine of Canada. And if you've ever heard my friend Shane speak, he'll describe when the federal minister of finance in the early 80s was talking about what was happening, the power shift that was happening because of Alberta's resource boom, and we were doing really good. He mentioned that they can't allow Alberta to become the economic engine of Canada. The major banks were talking about moving from the east to Calgary. One did. People were flocking to Alberta, and we were never intended to be that type of partner in Confederation. You've most likely all now heard the famous quote that from Clifford Sifton, from a speech that he gave in Winnipeg in 1903. And it goes something like this. We desire, and every Canadian patriot desires, and that's the people from the East, that the great trade of the prairies go to build up our factories and places of work and contribute to its prosperity in every way. So right from the get-go, right before Alberta was even a thing, we were the Northwest Territories back then. And interestingly enough, somebody came into the Whistle Stop Cafe and shared their grandpa's birth certificate, Edmonton, Edmonton, Northwest Territories. That was pretty neat. So we were never intended to be the grown-ups. We were intended to be a resource colony that contributed to Eastern Canada, which I will say that I believe that Eastern Canada and the Laurentians believe that Canada ends at the Manitoba border. I don't believe they really see Western Canada as Canada. I believe they see it as something different. And that's kind of, we've seen that in the past, the historical Trudeau salute that he gave Alberta, you know, the campaign slogan from the early 80s, screw the West, we'll keep the rest, these types of things. So really, when I speak about Alberta independence and Alberta sovereignty, I believe we're just moving into a natural progression. Like, this is just where we are intended to be. It's kind of like when you grow up and you start to be able to take care of yourself, you know, you're driving, you're paying your own bills, you're earning your own money. Well, now maybe it's time to consider living in your own house under your own rules. So, you know, with this concept, I no longer think about Alberta independence as breaking up or, you know, ending a bad relationship. I look at it as the inevitable outcome from the growing pains that happen when people build things together, right? We don't look at our kids growing up and leaving, and even though most of us have that, you know, the fight with our parents where we're too big for our britches and now it's time to, you know, get out of the nest. Many of us have experienced that. But it's not an overall negative thing. It's just part of life. That's how it goes. And, you know, I believe Alberta, where we're at right now, we're kind of in the same boat. And I don't agree with the people that are, you know, they're screaming at Alberta saying, you can't do this, you can't break up the country, how dare you? And I'm looking at this bigger picture like, well, you know, we're just kind of doing what people inevitably do. That's why countries tend to get smaller. They don't generally get bigger because as regions grow and become more, independent, they naturally want to make their own law and be governed under laws that affect them locally. Alberta right now is affected by laws that are made 4,000 kilometers away by people who don't suffer the consequences of those laws. And I don't think that's fair. I would have less of a problem with it if we were able to go to the polls and change it through the democratic will of Albertans. If we were able to go to the polls and elect representatives in Ottawa that could go there and effectively advocate for our concerns and our values as Western Canadians, I think it would be okay. But after the last federal election and the subsequent 2 federal elections where I watched Western Canada speak very clearly that they wanted a specific outcome for government, they wanted a specific set of values in the House of Parliament, and it never happened. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 8:09 when we're watching the news, and at 8:09, 9 minutes after our polling stations closed here, our ballot boxes weren't even out of the building, we see they've announced our government. That's the issue. That's the problem. It's not pipelines, it's not economy, it's not state surveillance bills. All of those things can happen. They can be advocated for in any society. But if you can't effectively, or if you can't influence the outcome in a democratic vote to suit your values, this is a problem, and this is where Alberta is. And that's why I say that I believe Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. Not because we hate Canada, not because this is some terribly destructive thing, but because it's a natural progression of how people, a society grows together. And that's where we are as Albertans. So the idea of Let's Talk Alberta is not so much for us to, well, actually not at all, for us to stand up here and tell you, this is what you need to do, or this is how you need to vote. My goal is, and the other speakers and volunteers at Let's Talk Alberta, our goal is to be leaders in the conversation. We want to bring this conversation to rooms of people just like you and engage with them, specifically people that disagree with us. We had a pretty spicy one a few events ago in, where were we? Claresholm? Was that Claresholm? I think we were in Claresholm. Somebody who disagreed with something else came and was challenging me on some other things that have nothing to do with this. And that, you know, that's fine too. But I really think that because we have this question, the question's going to be asked, that's a given. We now have an obligation to make sure that we all know the facts, that we all know the consequences and the benefits of choosing either one of those outcomes. If we keep the status quo, my view is if we choose the status quo, we still don't know exactly how it's going to go. We still don't have a fully costed plan. And even if there was one, we can't influence the outcome. That's how I view the status quo. Now, for a change, I look at that as, okay, yeah, we don't know exactly how it will be. We don't know exactly what the plan is because none of us have a crystal ball, and we can't tell if 6 months down the road, somebody's going to do something weird in some country that we haven't even heard of and it affects the way our policy works. We don't know that. But what I can tell you is we would be able to deal with the issue of making sure our values are heard. For the first time in Canadian history, a Western province would be able to effectively influence their futures. And how is that a bad thing? If Western Canada or Eastern Canada wants to do their thing and they want to go down the state surveillance, nanny state, New World Order path, if the democratic will of the people is to pursue that, who am I to argue? But we don't have to go with them. And that's why I believe Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. And that's why I believe that it's so important to have these conversations and to come into rooms and get together and talk about things, not just here. I anticipate that when you folks leave here that you'll be emboldened and you'll want to go sit in a coffee shop, perhaps like my coffee shop that's got the best coffee and hamburgers in central Alberta, and I encourage you to visit it as often as you can. But have those conversations, talk with your friends and your neighbors, maybe even your enemies, although that's not usually as effective. When we have the conversations, when we're open and honest about our opinions, and we're willing to listen to other people, that's when we get the best outcomes. And this whole notion that talking about religion and politics is impolite, I think is one of the biggest disservices we've ever done ourselves as Canadians. Because we're told it's impolite to talk about politics, which affects you from before you're born till after you're dead. And we're told that it's impolite to talk about religion, and that affects your eternity. I think these are two very important conversations, and I think we need to get back to a place where we're willing to have the conversations. I believe that we have a moral obligation to have these conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. And part of that moral obligation comes from the realization that our ability to even answer this question, to be asked this question by government, is something that's coveted by most of the rest of the world. And they don't get it handed to them on a silver platter like we do. Our government is going to give us a question on self-determination, and not one person in this room or in Alberta has had to lift a finger physically to do it. Nobody's had to watch their sons or daughters walk out the door to go fight for this opportunity and then never come back. Nobody's had to think about the 100 years of war that's been raging because your group of people wanted to self-determine. We walk into a room, probably just like this, maybe even just this room, and we walk into a booth, and in complete privacy, we are offered something that millions of people have died for, a choice. So with that, we have to have a lot of respect for that, and respect for the people that sacrificed to make sure that we could do that. The folks that fought in world wars and in wars of the world, they didn't fight for freedom so that you didn't have to fight. They did the fighting so that we would have an opportunity to continue fighting for freedom in a different way. And by having these conversations and participating in the process, that's exactly what we're doing. It's not a kick in the shins to Canada. As a matter of fact, Canada believes in democracy. Canada believes in self-determination, even so far as that our Prime Minister declared that Canada acknowledges the sovereignty of the Palestinian state. Canada was of the first, I think the first or the second sovereign nation to recognize Kosovo's independence. If Canada is willing to respect democracy, respect people's right as human beings to self-determine, why would they not be willing to respect Alberta's right to self-determine? I don't share the doom and gloom, Canada's going to send their military in. I didn't cue the Snickers, that just happened naturally. Great people, but they're really treated poorly by the institution. I do not believe that British Columbia is going to throw a hissy fit and try and block our pipelines. Like, the pipeline that feeds the refinery that provides all the jet fuel to the Vancouver International Airport. I don't believe in the doom and gloom thing. I believe that Alberta's choice of self-determination would probably be encouraging and cause for celebration everywhere, because that's what we normally do, right? I'm going to leave you with two little tidbits of information. The first one is this year, coming up right shortly, a nation that, in my opinion, is the greatest experiment in freedom ever is about to celebrate their 250th anniversary. That's significant. 250 years, for better or for worse, not perfect, being able to maintain their freedoms through thick and thin. That is really something. And that's the longest standing by the people nation on the planet. Did you know that?
That's right.
Another interesting point is that Alberta was created without our consent, by the way, without referendum, without plebiscite, without First Nations involvement, was created by an act of parliament in 1905. In 1905, Norway and Sweden agreed to not be governed under the same rules. They separated peacefully and decided to be neighbors. So these are just two examples of what can be done. Independence, sovereignty is not new. Since 1990, 38 countries have become sovereign states, left their parent countries. They've had to deal with changing their tax laws. They've had to deal with building this institution, sometimes from scratch. All of these things have been done before. It's not rocket science. And it very often is conflict-free. Of the last 38 nations that were independent, 80% of them were done with paper and a vote. No guns, no nothing. Maybe some screaming across the aisle, because it's an emotional thing, but largely democratically. 20% of those have been the result of conflict that costs millions of lives. So as you go into these questions in October, be thankful that we have the opportunity and the amazing blessing to be part of that 80%, and we're not part of the 20%. And then consider what had to happen for us to have these opportunities and govern yourself accordingly. Set your emotions aside and learn the facts and make the best decision that you can in October to make sure, regardless of which side you choose, that your choices are conducive to the best future, not even for you, but for those that come after us. Because let's face it, many of us in this room, we won't feel the full benefits of a sovereign Alberta that our kids will. But our kids, they will feel the benefits of what I believe the benefits of a sovereign Alberta would be, or they will feel what it's like to live in Mark Carney's New World Order. And the choice is ours. And I'm happy to answer your questions and hear from you why you advocate for one option or another. And I also invite you to try and change my mind that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. There's coffee at the back. Thank you, John, for picking that up. And I think there's other things in the lobby. Washrooms are out the door to the right. We'll reconvene for a question and answer period. Thank you very much.
You're in Muir.
No, I'm in Slave Lake.
No, but you lived in Muir.
Yes, I live in Muir.
Okay. Did you buy that from Albert?
No, I bought that from Stacy.
Albert ran that.
Ask Jessica. Jessica would know when I moved to Muir. But she would know. She's lived in Muir her whole life. Yeah.
I went here in 1950.
Okay. Oh, the whistle stop wasn't even open then. 1964.
No, that was never open. When I got you, I was in grade 3 then.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't have thought you were in 1950. Oh my God.
I mean, I'll be 83 years old.
Wow, you're looking pretty good. Congratulations. Oh, Jessica.
Is it all right to bring some brothers' papers in, Chris?
Of course.
On the table?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You know, you might not want to treat this like a church and sit all in the back. You might want to treat it like a concert and come up to the front where we can visit more like a family, if you'd like. Or you can stay in the back if you want.
That's the big bucks, yeah.
Gotta sit in the back so we don't volunteer.
Volunteer by accident.
Sitting here. I'm away from the door in case we have to open it again.
Did you want to use this, Chris?
I've got one on, but we can, we can,
Yeah, we'll have to share that, you and me.
actually,
It's not on.
if we grab the other microphone, I'll put this on the other one so that people can use it. Or I'll just repeat the questions. Yeah,
Do you
I'll-
want me to walk around with these?
No, I think it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, before we get to the questions, I want to read a blog that I wrote a few months ago because there's a lot of questions on there about First Nations and actually a lot of misconceptions. And if you're anything like me, over the last year, you've probably realized that maybe what we believed wasn't quite accurate in some regards, and it's been a steep learning curve. So this will take about, let me see, I want to say 6 minutes. We'll see how close I am. But I'm going to read you this blog, and then if you have questions about it, we'll talk about it after. But this is to answer some questions that I received online. So this blog is found at whistlestoptruckstop.ca. And this entry is called Treaties Were Meant to Free People. How Ottawa turned survival agreements into chains, and why some leaders now defend them. The modern story told about treaties is emotionally powerful, politically useful, and historically incomplete. We're taught to see the numbered treaties as instruments of permanent confinement, agreements that subordinated Indigenous peoples under Ottawa's protective thumb forever. Challenge that federal role, and it's framed as an existential threat to Indigenous survival. That narrative crumbles when you look at the actual conditions in the 1870s to 1900s and what the treaties were really negotiated to achieve. In what is now Alberta and the prairies, treaties weren't designed to trap anyone in dependency. They were survival agreements, hammered out amid famine, economic collapse, and violent instability. Buffalo herds vanished. Starvation and disease ravaged communities. Intertribal conflicts simmered. European settlement advanced relentlessly, and resistance alone couldn't stop it. Treaties were pragmatic responses to prevent chaos, mass displacement, and bloodshed. The alternative wasn't peaceful independence, it was collapse. Freedom then wasn't abstract sovereignty, it was survival and stability. Treaties delivered food aid in scarcity, agricultural tools, seed, livestock, education, and training, not as permanent handouts, but as transition tools to help Indigenous people endure immediate crises and join a new economic reality with dignity. They reduced violence as well. No shared legal framework existed before. Territorial disputes, raiding, slavery, and retaliation were routine. Treaties set defined territories, peace guarantees, and a common authority to curb bloodshed. Children no longer grew up in constant insecurity. Treaties were moral triage, the non-genocidal path across North America, contrary to what Justin Trudeau said, that Canada was a a genocidal maniac in colonialism. They weren't perfect. They were just the least bad option amid conquest pressures. They preserved hunting, fishing, and gathering rights while assuming adaptation, not permanent isolation outside the economy. And that is important. The chains came later, not from the treaties themselves. They came from the Indian Act, the Indian Act, which hijacked the path, centralized authority, replaced traditional governance with federally engineered band councils, restricted land and economic autonomy, and built a funding model that rewarded compliance over results. Transitional agreements became permanent bureaucratic containment. Administrators got insulated, communities got managed. That insulation shows up today in coordinated efforts by some Indigenous leadership to block initiatives that could benefit both Alberta and many First Nations communities. When Alberta pushed Bill 1 and Bill 54, asserting provincial jurisdiction and easing referendum thresholds, opposition was immediate. Chief Alan Adam of Athabasca Chippewa First Nation framed sovereignty moves as threats to treaty rights. Lawsuits and injunctions piled on from bands like Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, Athabasca Chippewa, Blood Tribe, and others arguing separation needs First Nations consent or it violates treaty obligations and Section 35 rights. Courts, for example, December 2025 federal ruling, have entertained these, warning new borders could infringe mobility and treaty promises. Could. What's glaringly absent is any real discussion of Alberta honoring treaties directly, transparently, locally, without Ottawa as eternal middleman. Federal control gets treated as synonymous with protection, despite its catastrophic track record. Same pattern in resource development. Some leaders like Stuart Phillip in BC declare pipelines never in absolute terms, yet many reserves face unsafe housing, boil water advisories, chronic unemployment, and youth exodus. Environmental protection is valid. Engineered poverty is not. Plenty of First Nations choose differently. Impact benefit agreements and equity stakes turn development into self-reliance. Oil sands operators spent billions procuring from Indigenous businesses, for example, $7.3 billion from 2013 to 16 alone. Bands like Fort McKay have netted hundreds of millions through partnership, funding housing, education, health, and infrastructure. The split isn't Indigenous values versus development, it's governance choices. This isn't new. In 2014, amid global anti-oil sands campaigns, Chief Alan Adam joined Neil Young's Honor the Treaties tour, blasting the industry on stage. Around then, Tides Foundation's 2013 IRS Form 990 publicly lists a $55,000 grant to 850450 Alberta Limited, a company tied to ACFN's business arm, with Adam and band officials as directors and shareholders in trust for the band. The timing aligned with his activism. Critics called it influence, though ACFN framed support as community legal efforts. Broader NGO and foundation funding has amplified certain voices, resourced lawsuits, and shaped narratives, often sidelining bands thriving via resource deals. The gap between leadership and lived reality widens. Chiefs and administrators operate in a federally funded bubble. Secure salaries, covered legal travel expenses, relevance via Ottawa alignment. Many members endure overcrowding, limited health care, few jobs, and little accountability. A system claiming to represent people while structurally disconnected isn't self-determination, it's management. And that was not accidental. The Indian Act's Band Council model wasn't traditional governance. It was federal control machinery, dependent on Ottawa, shielded from real accountability. It concentrates power and breeds mismanagement. Now, this is not an Indigenous failure. This was predictable from the top-down governance that was imposed by Ottawa. As Alberta debates sovereignty under Danielle Smith, treaties get weaponized to shut down discussion. That's a historical distortion. Treaties protected people from hunger, violence, and instability, not to freeze political change or grant permanent veto over democracy. A sovereign Alberta could honor treaties directly, transparently, locally as partners, not dependents. Replace chains with real accountability. The uncomfortable truth is that treaties were meant to free people, and Ottawa turned them into chains. And today, too many leaders defend those chains because the system still rewards compliance over outcomes. Re-examining this is not attacking Indigenous peoples. It's challenging a federal structure that failed them for generations, and it's long overdue. So these are my personal opinions from what I've learned, read, and experienced over the past few years, really, because what I was taught as a kid was not this. And the reason why I say this is long overdue, this is one of those conversations that people shy away from because it's too controversial. Meanwhile, our Indigenous brothers and sisters live under some of the worst statistics of anybody in Canada. One of those statistics is that in the worst situations, an Indigenous man lives up to 19 years less on reserve than a non-Indigenous living off reserve. That statistic in itself should make anybody pause and consider what supporting this status quo actually means for the people that they claim to advocate for, saying that Alberta independence would violate something. If Alberta independence violates the statistics that are on some of those trifolds back there that our First Nations brothers live under, I'm happy to do that. But it requires the conversation. Or something.
Well written. Is that your words?
Well, I rely on AI heavily to help me structure because I'm not an English major.
It was
But
well done.
it's my thoughts. I use the internet to research these things. I brought up a lot of really interesting historical record. Like specifically, there's some things you can read. I got to find it when I get home, and I'll try and put it on Facebook. But when you read how the Queen described what the Crown wanted to do for Indigenous people here, it wasn't about conquest. One of the lines that really stuck out to me was, the Queen's bosom is ample enough to feed everyone, including Her Majesty's Indians, which meant that, this wasn't an idea to segregate and push people off to different places. This was an idea that, no, our bounty is big enough for everybody and we can coexist together while maintaining what you use to sustain yourself. So this whole Canada's genocidal, the Crown was genocidal, no, I don't believe that at all. I believe that there were good people and bad people in that period of time. I believe that there was some really rough things that Indigenous people were going through, and some good people intervened. And some people took advantage of it. And some of the things that came after with Ottawa, with the Indian Act, were not conducive to prosperity for them. But I think that there's a real opportunity here, like a huge one. And this is way bigger than anything that we ask for, like representation and pipelines and stuff. This is literally life and death and a complete culture change and the breaking of shackles that have imposed these statistics on an entire group of people. And we got to talk about it.
Questions?
Well, that's loud silence.
That was just to lighten it up a little bit.
It's interesting,
John, there's a lady who's got a question.
She has a
Question at the back.
Is Danielle Smith pro-Alberta, wanting a strong Alberta, or is she just managing Alberta on behalf of Ottawa?
Well,
ask her.
yeah, you'd have to ask her. All that any of us can give you is our opinions. If you want my opinion, I'll give it to you, but you might not like it.
No, I want your opinion.
I think she's an alien. I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. No. I've observed in my limited time being aware and perceiving politics that provincial politicians seem to be waiting for the golden claw in the sky to pluck them up and bring them into the federal realm because it's way more lucrative. They make way more money. They have pensions. They all come out millionaires. It is absolutely unreal. So I believe that the majority of Western premiers manage the province, keeping with Canada's creed, which is peace, order, and good governance, so that they'll experience some of the colonial reward that's been baked into our system since 1867.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And if you remember in my little short talk, I think I was 15 minutes, what was the first objective of a politician? Get elected again. So Danielle Smith, she may have federal ambitions, I don't know, but she's been trying to walk a tightrope now for a long time and trying to appear neutral while proclaiming her desire for Alberta to be sovereign within the United Canada. It's not working for her. So it remains to be seen just where she's going to end up.
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry.
Mine's a little more harsh. Danielle Smith is not an unintelligent woman. She's smart. She's also been around this mulberry bush for a long, long time. All right? She blew it once. She had her mea culpas. But here's my problem. She's smart. She has facts at her disposal. She simply can ask for them and get them almost immediately from her team. She knows the exact situation of Alberta's situation within Canada. She knows it all. It is not reasonable for me to believe that somebody who had Alberta's best interests at heart would believe that right now Canada is the best choice for them. It doesn't make sense to me.
One final comment regarding the provincial government and Danielle Smith. The question one has to ask is that Danielle Smith proposed that independence would cost us $400 billion, which we know is hooey. We know that's not accurate. The real question that needs to be asked, given the fact that we've lost $1 trillion worth of investment in Alberta over the last decade, and more than that in Canada over the last decade, and knowing full well that we send anywhere from $23 billion to $45 billion a year to Ottawa through taxation. The real question is not, is it going to cost us $400 billion to be independent? The real question is, what is it going to cost us to stay?
But oh man, given the alternative of a Notley clone, I mean, I honestly don't think that now is the time to try to dispose our leader. I don't believe that. Is that, what is it? Get rid of her. How about that?
Yeah, dispose is the wrong word.
What is that word? I don't know what it means. Get rid of her. I don't think we should be on two battlefronts. I don't think we're strong enough to do two battlefronts right now. Our job right now is to get, it's like we're starting over again, a petition for a referendum. That's basically where we still are. I want to focus on that. That doesn't mean we don't go there and we don't make our presence known.
One more short comment.
But I think we have to just carry on pushing for independence.
Get the momentum going.
What's that?
Get the momentum going.
Yeah.
One thing, I'd like to, just a really short comment. Ralph Klein always said that his job as premier was to find out the direction the people were going, what the parade was, where it was headed, and get in front of it. Our job is to make the parade so big Danielle Smith has no option but to get in front of it.
That's what I wanted to say.
So so Joanne and John have both mentioned how they believe that we should just continue pursuing independence. What I would like to hear from our government is how they plan on actually doing what they say they're going to do. So Bill 1, the Alberta Sovereignty within the United Canada Act, suggested that our government wanted to pursue Alberta sovereignty. Well, my question is, what are we doing to do that? How are you going to do that?
Why aren't we doing
And what it should be is, how are you going to do that? And if you can't, then what's your what else? But we'll just stop at the first part. What's the first step that any province needs to do to become as sovereign as they can under the Constitution? That has to do with the golden rule. He who has the gold rules. Why is Quebec able to exercise their sovereignty under the Constitution?
They have the votes.
They collect their own taxes, for starters. That's a big deal. In Alberta and Western Canada, how many times have you folks in this room seen or heard of the federal government threatening to withhold transfers unless the province did what they wanted? It's happened quite a few times. That doesn't happen in Quebec. Quebec just says, you have your nation, we have ours, give us our money back. That's it. So if somebody could give me an effective argument as to how Danielle is going to achieve the Alberta sovereignty that she talks about, I'm 100% willing to listen. I'm all ears. If they can convince me or show me a clear path to doing that does not require Alberta independence, or at the very least a referendum on independence, I want to hear it. Because I would love for that to be the case. I would love for Danielle to make Alberta completely sovereign and autonomous, free from Ottawa's influence, and we stay in Canada. That's my preference. That's my personal preference. I just don't believe that it can be done. As a matter of fact, I know it can't be done. And it goes back to that Clifford Sifton quote I gave you. We were never brought into Confederation because they wanted an equal partner. We were brought in because they wanted our stuff. We were never, ever meant to be sovereign. And this is manifested with the wheat board, with the legislation on farm implements, with National Energy Program, a whole slew of things that my friend Shane talks about at his speeches. But to sum it up, I haven't seen any of that stuff done yet. The only thing that I've seen is encouraging municipalities to have their own police, which would result in an Alberta police force. And Bill 2 that put a referendum question in the way of something that Alberta could do anytime through legislation, which is our pension plan. Like, on one hand, the government is abdicating sovereignty to the federal government. And on the other hand, they're trying to tell us that they believe we can be sovereign with the United Canada, but they're not doing it.
That's what I want to see, action.
And that's the problem for me. And that's why I believe that her statements on Alberta sovereignty are disingenuous.
Not only that, they're not honest.
This lady has a question.
Just one more add to that, and that is that we talk about a sovereign Alberta within the United Canada, and we look at the concession that our government through our premier has made to carbon capture in order to get a pipeline, and that will add anywhere from $3 to $15 a barrel to the cost of our oil as we try to sell it internationally. It's ridiculous. What should have happened there is, no, we won't do that, and yes, we want to sell our oil, and yes, we want a pipeline. That's the only way to get... Ben is a great guy. He says the only way to get sovereignty is to take it. So I guess we could do that, but we certainly can't do it with the way things are right now.
No, and that's a problem for me.
Yes.
So in October, let's say we win what we want to win, what happens next?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing, for a time, because the question is, do you want the government to do something? And then you know what the government's going to say? Here, I will bring up my crystal ball and I'll tell you. I usually don't do this. They're going to say, we'll deal with this after the election. Right now, we just have to beat the NDP. They're going to pummel you folks, you good people of Alberta, with a massive fear campaign. They're going to talk about the boogeyman. Get it? Do you see what I did there? Because he was picking his nose on camera. They're going to tell you that you need to stop whining about sovereignty, and you just have to support so that we don't get an NDP government and nothing else is important anymore. I reject that notion completely. I believe we've been manipulated for years. I believe that those who are in power want to stay in power, and they will manipulate us to do it. And I believe we need to see right through it. And we need to have a vision and a mission, and we have to focus on what we want. And we have to stop letting the politicians scare us into following them. We need to force them to follow us.
If you look at
Just wait, honey.
if you look at all of the things that have happened up until now with respect to that, it's all been fear. Everything that Jason Kenney talked about in his debate with Keith Wilson was fear. Everything that Danielle Smith talked about in the costs of becoming independent is fear. Well, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Just don't.
This lady again?
What happened to the petitions that went to Ottawa?
What petition?
It was like 300,000 and they,
They're sitting at Elections Alberta, never to be counted.
right, so is there a point in even doing petitions?
Yes. Yeah. Well, because everybody knows that we got those signatures, right? So there is a point to it. That's the will of the people manifesting in something. It just didn't go the way that we wanted it to because of this idea that democracy stops if First Nations don't agree.
Did that judge make her ruling yet?
No, but there was what happened? A judge looked at it and they said, this doesn't look right. There's something obviously wrong here, but I reserve my decision. So they've identified that the ruling was wrong, and then they're too chicken to actually come out and overturn it.
That court case was about a desire for Stay Free Alberta to stay the decision of the original judge, which caused the petition to be uncounted. And so Yeah, so what the judge basically did was kick the can down the road. The judge actually said she saw that there was a lot of errors in that judgment, but her judgment or his judgment, I forget which one he was, whether it was a woman or a man, but it would be reserved, and she would give her judgment on that stay at some point in the future. That could be next week, it could be next year, it could be never.
Do you think that 400,000 people that signed petitions to get to stay actually was that many?
Well, they actually didn't sign a petition to stay. No, neither petition campaign was signing for an outcome. It was signing for a question.
For a question. You think
That's it.
400 that signed for the question was?
Well, I think there was, 400,000 people made up of Albertans, people from other parts of Canada, Disney characters. Yeah. No, there was some funny business there, and if you looked at the way it was done, like the rules were way, way different. And I'm not saying this to try and minimize or make it so it's not legitimate. I'm just saying that I know people who signed under fake names. I know people that signed more than once.
Ours was completely, you had to have your land description and,
Yeah,
you know,
it was a higher bar for sure.
everything else. There's no question of
And
signatures.
you know what else happened with that 300,000? And this is something we heard all over the place. I'm not signing that because the government's going to freeze my bank account.
Yeah. All
Right.
canvassers heard that, right?
It's much easier and more comfortable to advocate for the status quo than it is for change, right? So the status quo, they can have the conversation, they can raise the flag, they can do all those things, and it's totally fine and acceptable. But as soon as someone challenges that and we say, no, I believe in an independent Alberta, well, now all of a sudden, oh, that's treason, how dare you, you're a bad person, right? It's not an easy thing. I have an online question unless anyone else has one. Okay, I'll put it on the screen here. I can do that from here, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So Hank says, treason! I think that's how it was said. Once you went to USA White House and would you trust Trump and why would want to leave a landlocked country? Okay, so first of all, people going to the United States to have discussions about whether or not the United States would recognize an independent Alberta is not treason. And if any of those people online or anywhere believe that it was treason, just go and file charges. Happy to defend that in court. Why would want to leave a landlocked country? Okay, so Alberta is currently landlocked, unless something has changed. Still landlocked?
I believe it is.
I know it's raining a lot, but
Well, I guess it could rain long enough that we could build an ark and.
yeah. Well, it might happen at this rate. There's more. The ditches are flowing in more than I've ever seen. Anyway, we're landlocked right now, so that's not changing. What's changing is how we deal with that. Right now, it's policy that's prevented us from moving our resources, not our geographical location. And I point this out as well. Geographic location does not equate to prosperity. Switzerland is landlocked, as are many Arab nations, and many are prosperous. Switzerland is quite prosperous. And Venezuela has like 70% of their border is coastline. And they were not prosperous. It was the policies that made the difference. So he goes on to say, Quebec is sovereign, Alberta is not sovereign. No, that's not true. Quebec takes as much sovereignty as they can under the Constitution, but they are not a sovereign nation. Although they did put a for sale sign up in front of the Lieutenant Governor's house, which I thought was awesome.
And also petition the king to stay the heck out of Quebec.
They didn't even send anyone of importance. They sent a courier to deliver a letter to the king. When the king came here for Mark Carney to rah Canada, a courier delivered a letter that said, we reject the monarchy, we're not listening to you, you're not our king.
Please don't come to Quebec.
Don't come to Quebec. Sovereign, language, land, and culture. You can't be sovereign. I think you should be profit sharing. If there's, I'm okay with that, okay? If Alberta becomes a sovereign nation and we stop hemorrhaging $30 billion to Ottawa, for which we don't receive a penny back in services or cash, I would allow Hank to continue sharing his profits with Ottawa. I will make sure that he has a stamp that he can put on the envelope after he writes a check to Ottawa for the portion that he sends now. And every man, woman, and child in Alberta right now, our portion of what goes out that we don't get anything back is just about $6,000. So Hank is...
Man, woman, and child.
Yeah, so a family of 4, $24,000. And Hank, you are more than welcome to do that if you believe in that profit sharing. And I expect you will, because you need to put your money where your mouth is. But how are you going to ship it? Canada charge you billions to cross the landlock. They already do. $30 billion a year. This whole idea of landlock goes both ways. Alberta sends oil into the United States, and then it goes up into Ontario to supply them. Alberta sends oil to Vancouver that supplies the refinery in Burnaby to make the jet fuel for the airport. Like, this is the idea that Alberta has no leverage and no negotiating strength in independence is completely ludicrous. I would argue that we have very little negotiating power right now, and independence is the only way to get it.
I agree with that. You know, it's interesting. Ben Trudeau is a really interesting guy, a great guy. One of the things he talked about was, how much was it, $30 billion a month that goes into a bank account in Toronto? He says, why don't you have that deposited in the credit unions in Alberta and let them administer the money and make some money on it? And what Quebec does is they collect all the taxes, including the federal, and then they remit the federal portion to the federal government, but they don't necessarily send it all. They just send what they think the federal government should get. And the federal government says, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We have the leverage. We can do it. It's like the provincial police force. We don't need a referendum for a provincial police force. Danielle Smith could do that with a simple, it's done. We don't need a referendum for the Alberta pension plan, which would increase. Many of us in this room are collecting government pensions. We don't need, a referendum to do that. It can be done just with let's do that, bang, it's done. We send $3 billion a year more to the Canada pension plan than our seniors collect. Without our Alberta contributions, the Canada pension plan would really be a struggle. What's the first thing the federal government did when Alberta first started talking about their own pension plan is call a meeting of all the provincial finance ministers. Gee, look what would happen if Alberta took their money out of the CPP. So that could all be done. Same thing with this referendum we're having. We don't need a referendum to ask the question as to whether or not we should have a referendum. It can be done with a simple, let's have a referendum.
By the Premier.
By the Premier. She could do that.
Yeah. Doesn't require 7,000 people standing out in the cold for 4 months either.
And which is what we did.
But you know what, that was actually good, because that built her forces.
Yeah.
You know,
But now she should have the picture and just do it.
all of this,
Last year, and
Pardon?
asked all these same questions.
yeah.
She went around, had all these meetings
Those
last year.
meetings.
Yeah, exactly. And the answers were all, I actually stood up.
We all voted for that. The police force, we voted for that. Collect their own
Equalization.
taxes, we voted for that.
Equalization.
60,
She didn't do nothing with it.
61.68% of Albertans voted to modify or eliminate the equalization formula under Jason Kenney.
Do you know why they do that? They come and ask us those questions, then don't do anything? They do it as a way to placate us and make us calm down so that we're peaceful, orderly, and pretend it's good government. And then they gaslight us that we have to just focus on the next election. And they never do anything because we never make them.
You know, they try to make us afraid of having an NDP government. How about this one? Let's make you afraid of the fact that if you don't do what we want you to do, we will vote for somebody else and split the vote, and you can be the opposition to an NDP government, and you can be responsible for what happens to this province as a result. You know, call a bluff.
Well, it's not a bluff. I mean, I said this, I'm being more open about this. If people won't have the courage to make the changes necessary to achieve what they want, then we don't deserve those changes. Right? If we're going to continue bending our knee and cowering in fear and being manipulated by politicians, we don't deserve to be sovereign, because that's not what sovereign people do.
And begging.
It'll just get worse.
So,
What we have now is just a drop in the bucket of what will come.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And if you watch that Liberal government, since they've been in power, it used to be once a month we got a bill that took away our freedoms or impinged on our rights somehow. Now it's almost like once a week.
Well, they just pushed through the House, a whole bunch of them.
Oh, they did.
And they didn't.
They really,
Didn't allow debate.
they shut down debate.
Wait a minute. How could that be? They didn't have a majority government when we had the election.
That's right. They,
What happened?
and now they're going to break for a long time. They broke under Trudeau for 8 months. We're being fooled. We are not being represented.
They're being managed.
We're being managed.
Yes, and did you know that that's what Canada was founded on? Did you know that? I'm not even kidding you. I wrote another blog. It's called, what is it called?
I hate titles.
Let me think.
I never remember them.
I think it's called, is it called What Business Have Ye With Me, Your Majesty? I was trying to be real smart with the title. It's a blog. This is my thesis. Canada was not created as an independent nation. It was created as a business transaction. That's my thesis. And I dug into that and I supported it and I wrote a blog on it. And you can read it and you can disagree, agree, whatever you want. But here's what I found. Canada, around that 1867 period, the United States was growing very rapidly, and they had their eyeballs on Canada. Have you ever heard the phrase 54-40 or fight? They wanted us, and they were going to have us. We would have been annexed because BC was in turmoil because of the debt incurred from during the gold rush. That's a really cool, interesting story. And if you don't believe there was good people that wanted to do something for First Nations people, there was people that literally went and spent years just learning languages so that they could help people transition and teach them English and learn the new world. So that's something. But we would have been annexed. We were the Northwest Territories. We didn't have the jurisdiction that what a province has, and Ottawa knew that, and the Crown knew that. So it wasn't a group of people like us that got together in a room, wrote a constitution, and declared independence like the United States did. No. We had managers, John A. Macdonald and George Etienne Cartier and a few others, went to England. They sat with the Crown's representatives and they hammered out the British North America Act. Right. Well, the British North America Act created the Dominion of Canada and it imposed upon Canadians the system of governance that we live under today. Now, it changed a little bit in 1982 with the inception of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as an inclusion in the Constitution Act 1982, which is a rewrite of the BNA. But what I'm getting at is the Crown didn't want to lose Dominion control over this territory, over Rupert's Land that had made them very, very wealthy. And so they did what they always do, and they talked with their governors, John A. Macdonald and them, and they created a structure for peace, order, and good government. Now, this was a British imperialistic thing for years. Every single place that the British Empire colonized, they installed governors, and the governor's job was to keep peace and order. And when they did, they were given knighthoods. John A. Macdonald had a wife that was 30 years younger. I don't know if that was a reward or punishment or both or whatever. But we've seen from 1867 till now knighthoods, appointments to boards, privy council, all of these things that elevated people that maintained the control. Jason Kenney gave us a referendum on equalization. Nothing changed. He maintained control by placating people and pretending. He got appointments. Like this is where Canada's at, and this is why I say that we have to learn about these things because they don't teach you in school. They make you believe that, well, when I was in elementary school, I'll be 47 this September, right? Yeah. So I started school in like the mid 80s, I guess. And that was right on the heels of the repatriation of the Constitution. So we were excited. There was a lot of national pride. I remember my teachers talking about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution and how we're free and we always would be. And Canada's just so great because of these things. And now I'm like, holy crap. This was a business deal to keep us controlled so that we actually didn't gain our independence because we never did.
And it was there because unlike the East, Alberta, Saskatchewan were mostly settled by Americans. They were the first ones up. It was later that we brought in the Europeans. And they were actually afraid that USA might come and pluck us off too.
Well, they would have. They wanted to.
Yeah.
They wanted us.
You keep talking about your friend Shane. He's our friend too. Love that guy. He's a fountain of knowledge, and his knowledge increases every week. But one of the things he commented on, and I can't remember the communities he talked about, there are many communities in Alberta that were named after places in the United States. And the one that I remember is USONA.
Yeah.
What does USONA mean?
Mm-hmm.
United States of America. So, I mean, we are different from the people in Eastern Canada. We're not the same. When Quebec says to Alberta, you don't have a culture, they're absolutely incorrect. Our culture is different than the culture of Quebec, certainly. It's different than the culture of Ontario. But it is our culture. It's a culture of determinism, of effort.
Of working hard
of
so we don't
working
die
hard.
over the winter.
That's right, because winter can be a real, I was going to use the B word there, but I won't. It can be really difficult for people. Yeah, bad. That's it, really. So we're different than they are. We ask the government to get the heck out of our way so we can get done what we need to get done. In Eastern Canada, they say, well, what are you going to do for me today? What can I get from you? How can you help me? And here we have a totally different culture. It's get the heck out of my way and let me do what I need to do. We will look after our poor. We'll look after our disabled. We will look after those people who are disadvantaged. We will do that because part of our makeup is charity. You know, it's not the government's. I detest the socialist idea that the government should take care of everybody. We need to take care of our brothers and sisters, and we'll do it if they get out of our way and leave us to do what we need to do and leave us to keep the money that we earn and the possessions we have. We'll look after those people. That's because that's who we are.
Wait a minute.
What?
I think there's a better way to take care of people.
How's that?
We should compel people to give up a portion of the value they create through their hard work,
Yeah.
exchanging their time of their life for money. That's what a wage is.
Yeah.
And we should compel people to give a portion to the government. And then the government can come out with something to deal with a certain problem. Like say, we're going to help deal with homelessness. We're going to give $185 million to help end homelessness. And then some people in the government, their friends, can start companies that can access that money that we were compelled to give. And they can become, hold on, gets better. They become very wealthy by giving a portion of that money to the cause.
Yeah, and keeping the rest of it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they do help some people, but at the end of the day, it's people who are connected in government helping their friends who support them through
That is such a good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
I think I spoke about that in the first talk, guys.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things the federal government did was they've been talking. They're trying to figure out how to get money out of us, which is why I mentioned the possibility of a windfall tax against Alberta. One of the things that they were talking about was eliminating the charitable status of churches. They actually did a study on it and found out if the government had to duplicate all of the charitable acts that churches do, it would cost them a fortune. So they didn't eliminate the charitable status of churches just because of the good work that they do.
Speaking of churches, has anybody noticed anything different in the last 10 years with churches across Alberta and Canada, for that matter?
The Christian churches are being burned down.
Oh, yes, they're being burned down, yeah. Why are they being burned down?
I don't know.
Because people have been brainwashed to believe that the people of faith are a stain on our history. They did all these horrible things. Let me tell you something. Did you know that the first schools and hospitals in Canada were churches? The first orphanages were churches. The First Nations outreach, including the people that went and learned the language so they could help people integrate, was churches. Father Lacombe was one of them from where I'm from. Was it all perfect? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you, if the churches hadn't done what they did back then to help people, we would not have this country. We wouldn't. And instead, we're made to believe that because some kids were treated poorly, and no, it wasn't just First Nations kids, it was all kids, because kids, they were beat back then and terrible things were done to them. In England, in residential schools, it was the same crap. Not defending it, But I'm just saying it's not specific to one group. If the good people hadn't done the good things back then, there's a lot of people that wouldn't have survived.
I'm going to speak to this one because it wasn't my other talk.
Take that, the fake microphone.
That's what's not being conveyed to our brothers and sisters of the First Nations. They don't know. I lived through time, my brother lived through times. He got a strap every morning. And he got the strap because we were bussed in. And while he was waiting for the bell to ring, he was playing in the playground. And his hands got dirty. And back when we went to school, if you came to school in the morning with dirty hands, you got the strap. So his whole grade 1 year was a strap every morning on each hand.
Would have been a tough kid.
He ended up a tough kid. In grade 7, I almost got the strap, and this is not something I'm proud of, because we were told if we forgot to write misspelled words out on our spelling list, I don't remember, it was ridiculous, probably 10 times each, maybe 100. They weren't reasonable. That if you didn't do that, you're getting the strap. And I got out of it, not my proudest moment, by lying and saying I left them at home and I ran home at lunchtime and wrote them like crazy with 2 pens. Not my good moment. Grade 7. It's unbelievable. We were in school one day and somebody ate an orange and left the peels on the desk. And our teacher told us we all had to stay in, we couldn't go home for lunch. And I said, that's not really nice. I know that and I'm only in grade 8 at this point, I'm in grade 8 at this point. I said, that's not fair. The lunch kids who are driving in on the bus, they still have something to eat. You expect us to go through a whole day without eating. I never ate breakfast, so it was real important to me. I got sent to the office, and but for the antics of my brother, who was well known by the principal, and consequently so was my father, I would have got the strap. And I did it very nicely. I just said it wasn't fair to punish all for what some child did. Why not just pick it up, throw it in the garbage? Trust me, as a teacher later, I remembered that. That's just rude. But that's how common capital punishment was.
There's some people in this room that are as old or older than my wife and me. I am. But I got to tell you,
I never grew up.
what would you say about a kid in the 10th grade who was sitting in an assembly and was slouching in his chair like this and not paying a whole heck of a lot of attention to what was going on, who had a principal walk up behind him and whack him in the head with a textbook? And that kid stood up and smacked the principal in the jaw with a right cross.
Was that you?
Yeah.
That happened in Mirror.
So we went through the same kind of things that the First Nations went through. School wasn't a lot of fun when we were kids. Wasn't when you were a kid either, was it?
It was a blast.
Yeah.
Actually, my father grew up in a residential school.
Yeah.
Actually, from age 5 to 12.
Yeah.
There's
We
a,
had a tough time.
yeah, I don't think we can compare the strap to what our younger peers got in residential schools. I don't think we can do that at all. We got to go home at night to parents who loved us and at least gave us a hug for the crap we got in school, right? And when it was unjust, I could say, phone my father. And at that point, have him back off. Way different story.
Oh, yeah.
Way different story. Now, was it bad? Yeah. But was it the norm? Every school was treated that way.
There's something else that people don't talk about. Some of the kids that went to residential school didn't have families that loved them, and they didn't have anywhere else to go. Or food or anything. Like, there was some really terrible things that happened to that entire group of people. And some of the things that are being attacked now are the reason why many people survived. I've got my great-grandma and grandpa, Leo and Madeline McMahon. They're from Provost area. They adopted my Uncle David when my grandpa would have been like in his 30s, I guess. So my Uncle David, he's a First Nations kid, part of the 60s scoop, but he was scooped because the outcome that he was facing with his family was not good. And the family knew that. And they wanted their kids, even though they knew that they couldn't give the kids what they needed, they loved their kids and wanted them to have a future. So lots of them sent them to live with other families that could take care of them. And these are some of the realities that aren't talked about. We only ever hear, oh, the RCMP went to people's houses and dragged the kids out. Okay, but that did happen. That happened to non-First Nations kids too, didn't go to school. We used to have truancy police, right? You had to go to school. And if we're gonna talk about the bad things that happen, we also have to talk about the good things that happen and look at the overall picture and not just condemn an entire country, really, as evil when there were so many people that did good things and helped people as well.
Talk about the 60s scoop. I had a friend, this was probably more than 30 years ago. He was a First Nations resident, and he was subject to the 60s scoop, but it wasn't they didn't barge into his home and take him out against the protests of his parents. His parents said, please take him because we can't give him what he needs. He was looked after by a Caucasian family. They put him through school. They put him through university. He became a dentist, and he donated much of his time to Hobima with free dental work. He said to me one time when we were chatting, he said, the best thing that ever happened to me was being taken and put in this other home. Yeah. So there's more than one story.
So you might be wondering, like, what does this have to do with Alberta? Well, I have a vision of a nation, of Alberta, that actually believes in history and respects history enough to tell the truth about both sides. I see a nation where we don't allow the media to make wild claims about 250 bodies being found somewhere, create an outrage that sparks a nation being ashamed of their ancestry. These things that we're witnessing in Canada are not conducive to a strong nation. And I believe that Alberta could be a leader in that, and that we have national pride and we respect history. We learn from it. We have conversations instead of silencing them. And when the media lies, we hold them accountable. When our politicians lie, we hold them accountable. When our politicians say things like, I'm going to go to your door with the police and ask you why you're not taking a medical intervention, we hold them accountable. And we don't have that right now, and I really don't think we can under the current system.
I think we used to be able to do that. Trudeau changed it.
Yeah. Well, prior to Trudeau in old Canada, as my friend Dr. Michael Wagner calls it, we lived largely under common law. What happened with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically with Section 1, is it gave our unelected judges the authority to make law through rulings and through interpretation according to Section 1. And it got so bad that as I was fighting for my rights, I had the last living signatory of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Honourable Brian Peckford, offer to testify on my behalf to say that the way the government was using Section 1, which is the demonstrably justified clause, was not within the scope of the intention that they wrote. And you know what the judge told him? You don't have standing, you're not an expert on the matter. So in old Canada, our judges looked at common law and they balanced the scales of justice according to that. Now it's different. Now, because our government has enumerated our rights and freedoms, it is implied that if that isn't there, we don't have it. And one of the biggest things that's on there that we don't have, property rights. You know what the first piece of property you own is?
Me.
You.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
You know, it's interesting when you talk about common law. Common law is based entirely on precedent and the fact that everything is legal except that which is prohibited by law. So unless there's a law against it, it's fine. When you start creating great long lists of what the rights of people are, then you've actually changed everything around. You've turned it upside down. And everything that there isn't a law for is not legal until the government says it is.
That's what I say, everything's illegal until you get a permit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly the opposite of what it should be.
Oh, sorry, John. Andy says, John, getting smacked by a principal is not the same as being murdered in a school.
That's true.
There's no indication that anybody was ever murdered in the school. That's interesting.
Yeah. Another interesting fact, and I'm going to really catch it for this one. I forgot to mention earlier, usually I do this before the break because lots of people leave. This tour, this initiative is all grassroots funded, which is unfortunate for you folks that are still here because we haven't passed the donation bucket yet. So if you feel so inclined, please throw something in there if you can. If you can't, it's not a big deal. But I will put this call out to those who are watching. I really dropped the ball. I do believe that I'm going to get the strap tonight later, and not in a fun, playful way, or maybe a textbook to the head or something. Please, if you can, consider supporting Let's Talk Alberta with a donation at letstalkalberta.com, or you can send an e-transfer to letstalkalberta@gmail.com. Yeah, I would really appreciate that because we're a long ways from home. It's a lot of hours and miles to come up here, and we can't do it without your support. So we're going to have to really lean on the 303 people viewing this live right now, and let's hope that they chip in online and help fund the trip. Thank you very much. Did you guys have any more questions?
How many people are going to go to the UCP convention this November and make their voices heard?
Lots.
Oh, I'm going. It's those AGMs are fun. The food's not great though,
My
but
wife and I are both going.
Sucks.
yeah.
Now that's why we didn't sign up for the meal. We'll have something where the food's decent. We're going.
Yeah, it's a really fun experience, and all my friends go, so it's nice to spend
Both
some
of them?
time. Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, I think I.
Oh, I have one question.
Okay.
It would be nice to connect with people that are like here. Is there a way to get people's names or emails so that we can continue to converse either online or whatever? I'm just putting that there.
The best. Okay, so the question is how can you network to make friends in this kind of initiative? There's a few ways. Like, we don't give people's contact information out. We've seen how that works out.
Yeah.
I would suggest for those that are watching live, engage with the people on the live stream. Get to know them through there. I have one of my friends, Steve. He's very active on all of these things, and he's made a lot of friends. He knows a lot of people now just from that. When you're at these in-person events, and we have the time between the presentation and the Q&A, talk to people, get to know them, share contact information, network in that way. And that is really important. It really is, because how many times have people here or online been going through something and you felt that you're the only one? I certainly did in the 2021 time when I thought that I was just the crazy wacko who felt like the government wasn't right in what they're doing, and I stood up. I felt totally alone.
Me too.
For about 5 minutes until people, right? So it is important to build these networks. Another reason why it's important to build the networks is because when we come up here, we do rely on local support to do things like local advertising. We're going to start with flyer campaigns prior to every meeting. So, if you guys have a network here and you can build out the network through the Let's Talk Alberta organization. We have a kind of organizational hierarchy where we coordinate volunteers and that sort of thing. We can tell you, hey, we're going to be in Slave Lake, or we're going to be in Canuso, or we're going to be wherever on this date. And before that date, we want to print off in the community, we want to print off 2,000 trifolds, and we want to put all the dates for the events in each city that's up there, and we want to mail them out to the whole thing. So, then we coordinate with you guys, and you guys sit down and you have a printing thing party and fold things for a couple hours and drop them off in the mailbox, and that's how these things work. We don't have the deep pockets of, the Canadian Francophone Association that's funding the other side. We're all funded by you guys.
You know what, that's really good, because we were talking about that as a group ahead of time, the need for something like that, so thank you for speaking on that, Chris.
So the first meeting I went to was in Grand Prairie, and it was Alberta Prosperity Project. And you were on screen. And then I went to a session in Edmonton. Can you just give us a brief history, the name change thing and why?
Well, there isn't any name change. This is a completely different organization.
Okay.
So during the petition campaign, I had a little bit of a heated disagreement with Mitch, and it wasn't just me, but we felt like APP needed to continue the education. I believe and continue to believe that education is the single most important thing for this initiative, because if you don't know the facts, how can you make a good decision? So I thought, well, you know, if they want to shut down through the petition campaign, that's their choice. But that doesn't mean that I have to. So I decided, hey, we'll start this Let's Talk Alberta. We'll continue the conversation. We'll carry the torch. And we wanted to make sure that it continued on. And it's a good thing that we did, because there wasn't a pile that happened, right? Even now, there's not a lot going on. So it wasn't a name change. It's just a completely new organization with a little bit of a different mission. Our mission is to specifically bring the conversation. And it's oftentimes it's like-minded people, but we do get some crowds that have people that are opposed, and they ask questions and they challenge us, and we want to hear these things. So we do a little bit of the, come to our meetings and change our mind, because if we're faced with this question and you believe that the status quo is the best path, you probably should try and change my mind, because there's a lot of people that think like me, and that's what's different about us.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap it up there, and thank you very much,
you
folks,
all.
for sticking with us. And
Yeah.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
my pleasure, my pleasure.
I hope we didn't irritate anybody.
Have fun on Grand Prairie on Saturday.
I don't know what you're talking about. Oh yeah, grab another coffee, folks.
Grab a
There's
coffee
lots
and
left.
Take it with you.
Or even take one.
Thank you. You too.
When is Grand Prairie?
Saturday,
No.
27th of the Unity Bus.
No, we have tickets for the rodeo in Pinoca.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, there you go, folks. Another Let's Talk Alberta presentation in Slave Lake, Alberta. Tomorrow, we are in one of the farthest reaches of Alberta. We're up in Lacrete, Mennonite country up there. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic place. We're looking forward to seeing you all there. Again, sorry if we didn't get to your questions from the comments. I do my best up there, but I can't see all of it. I'll try and get to them after. We do clip these up, and I go through and look for comments and stuff afterwards. So we'll do that. Thank you to those who are supporting the work that Let's Talk Alberta is doing. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of time, energy, and money to make this happen, and we couldn't do it without you folks. So thank you very much for that. And we will see you tomorrow in Lacrete. Same time, different place. Good night. Meow!